Hello, and fasten your seatbelts, because I'm about to unveil what I believe to be the 13th Zodiac sign. Are you beyond excited? Good. Let's go. So I've spliced together more than a dozen maps created by the International Astronomical Union and Sky and Telescope to attempt to get an accurate measurement of the zodiac constellations along what is known as the ecliptic. And based on the data provided, I came up with a personalized theory of astrology, which includes potentially 4 new zodiac signs. My source is Sky and Telescope and the International Astronomical Union. Sky and Telescope is a magazine which has been around since 1941, who have made it a goal to make the most accurate cosmic maps possible within the limits of modern technology, and they have their roots in some of the earliest planetariums and museums in America. And the International Astronomical Union, which has been around since 1919, is operated and managed by the leading authorities on astronomy who work together in collaboration with professional astronomers to publish scientifically accurate information. And as you can see, these are what the maps look like. And each map is a map of one zodiac constellation, with latitude represented in degrees and longitude represented in hours, as it were. So yeah, these systems of measurement have been around since about the time of British naval technology. So I'm pretty trustworthy of these maps. So here it is, everyone. This is my theory entitled Technical Astrology. Enjoy. So 1 hour of longitude by established nautical definition over centuries represents about 15 degrees of Earth at 20 degrees north latitude. On this map, the scale of the constellation Aries is a perfect representation of one standard unit of longitude called an hour. There are 24 hours in this map, which if divided into a 360-degree circle, make up 15 degrees. This is how Aries appears in the sky compared to the widths of the 11 remaining constellations. This does not represent arc or house systems. It is only meant to represent width comparisons in the sky there. Now that we know that 15 degrees represents 1 hour, based on this map, Taurus represents a little over 2 hours of longitude, or 2 hours of a day on Earth. Since traditional astrologers represent Taurus and the other constellations as equal lengths, Aries, by their definition, would be 15 degrees off, and Taurus is about 2 degrees off. The most notable star in Taurus is called Aldebaran, and like Betelgeuse and Antares, it has a reddish hue. So our first candidate for a potential new or potential 13th zodiac sign is the constellation of Orion, but it would need a little more elbow room because it's about 6 degrees wide in order to divide more evenly. That being said, the more I measured the constellations, the less congruency I found. The Gemini constellation is about 25 degrees across and is easily visible on the eastern horizon at 4 a.m. in the late summer and early fall. It contains 2 fairly bright stars, one pronounced Polyleptist, but spelled Pollux, and the other pronounced Castor. Both stars are fairly easy to spot on a clear night. I also noticed a large gap between Cancer and Gemini along the ecliptic, and a bright star between the two called Procyon of the Canis Minor constellation, and also consider it to be a candidate for a new zodiac sign, especially since Cancer is much more difficult to see in the sky nowadays. Therefore, if you were born in late July, it's possible you might be a canine. And like I said, though the stars are difficult to see, the 4 stars of Cancer are actually perfectly aligned across the ecliptic. It is one of the 4 cardinal signs which represents a new season of the year. And intriguingly enough, all of these cardinal signs, all these constellations that are cardinal constellations, such as Aries, Capricorn, and Libra, have a constellation measuring less than 15 degrees. Leo is one of the more noticeable constellations of the zodiac in the literal sky, and it also takes on the shape of its title. It may very well resemble the animal it represents better than any of the other constellations. The ancient Egyptians associated Leo with the flooding of the Nile, because the sun was in Leo when the flood took place. And because it brought water, The Egyptians, according to Robert Leah of Space.com, held it in high regard. Then we have the Virgo constellation, which is the widest constellation, making up about 2,880 miles of longitude, which is nearly 3 hours of an Earth day. The only visible part of this constellation is a large blue-hued star called Spica, which is 12,000 times bigger than the Sun, at about 260 light-years away. Just north of Spica is also a fairly bright star, almost as radiant as Venus, called Arcturus. It is 25 times the size of the Sun, at 32 light-years away, but it's still a lot brighter than Spica. Arcturus is a pretty bright star, but Arcturus and Spica are kind of the only visible stars in that section of the sky, which is known as the Boötes Void. Libra only contains 2 stars that are actually visible. The rest of the constellation is pretty much invisible unless you're miles away from civilization. And wouldn't that be nice this day and age, to be miles away from civilization? Scorpio is 28 degrees wide, and it takes on the form of the animal it represents almost as well as Leo. It looks like a scorpion, but its brightest star, Antares, has a magnetic red hue to it. It is another one of the red supergiant stars, about 680 times the mass of the Sun. The Greek meaning of the word Antares literally means rival to Aries, because it was sometimes confused as Aries' ruling planet, Mars. Sagittarius is our first constellation, which is actually the width it is supposed to be in Western astrology. So yeah, finally a 30-degree constellation. Sagittarius the Archer is the marking point for the black hole of the Milky Way galaxy, which our solar system orbits throughout the ages. But I did notice a 7-degree gap between Capricorn and Sagittarius, and this gap could easily be represented by Aquila, whose brightest star, Altair, is fairly easy to see. Therefore, maybe if you were born in late January, your sign might be Aquila the Eagle. And then there's Capricorn the Goat, which contains a noticeable star directly south of Altair, known as Deneb Algid, meaning head of the goat. It is a 20-degree constellation, but overlaps Aquarius by 10 degrees, giving it only really 10 degrees of coverage on the ecliptic. With exception to its bright star at its cap, the constellation is very hard to decipher from Aquarius. Since the line between Aquarius and the goat is a blurred one, I just established it as a 15-degree, 1-hour constellation. Despite containing a few visible stars here and there, it's difficult to establish the shape of Aquarius, the water bearer. Though it is 38 degrees in width, it overlaps the goat by 15 degrees, making it a 23-degree wide constellation. It was probably much more visible in the time of ancient Greece and China, because they both took notice of the region of this constellation, which is known in Western astrology as the water jar, but the Chinese refer to it as Yu Lin, which means feathers and forest, referring to the light-footed soldiers of the north. But considering it is very dim, I wanted to see if there were any alternatives. If we omit the section which contains the jar of water, which is really very hard to see, Pegasus could be considered a new zodiac sign. Pegasus contains a notable square pattern, which could come in handy if you were navigating this fairly dim section of sky for some reason. But since the jar of water is what makes Aquarius a water bearer, instead of, say, a mantis, which is what it resembles as well, it might be better to leave out Pegasus from the equation. But we'll keep it around as a point of reference. And finally, Pisces is even less viewable than Aquarius, and it's hard to see any of its stars, or any of the stars in its neighborhood for that matter, which is strange considering it is a 40-degree constellation. But similarly to Virgo, it also represents a vast void of space, directly opposite to Virgo. Though it seemed all well and good that it was possible to add more signs to the zodiac, I ran into a bit of an issue. I noticed that all of the zodiac signs, all of them, are directly centered on the ecliptic, with exception to Aries. Orion, on the other hand, definitely fits the bill as a technical zodiac sign, because one of his arms nearly grazes the ecliptic, and it does indeed occupy a gap between Taurus and Gemini. However, based on, the unwritten rule of ecliptical proximity, it is best to sadly omit Canis Minor, Pegasus, and Aquila because they're just a little bit too far away from the ecliptic. So, based on all the data I gathered, I think it would be reasonable to introduce Orion as the 13th zodiac sign. And this is because Orion's sword is closer to the ecliptic than even Aries is, and it occupies a gap and contains more than several bright stars. Many consider Ophiuchus to be the 13th sign, but based on the fact that it occupies the same terrain as Scorpio, it's hard to jump on that bandwagon, and especially since Ophiuchus does not contain really any notably bright stars. In order to support my proposal, I will need to not only prove the accuracy of these maps, but also that I am implementing them accurately. Let's begin. The map provided by Sky Maps and the IAU gives us 1 hour of longitude, which naturally makes up 1/24th of a circle relative to 1 day on Earth. If we are able to distribute this unit along the map so that it makes up 24 even units, we can better assume that the map is to the correct scale. Since Aries is the only constellation which nearly perfectly represents 1 hour of longitude, I copied and pasted 1 unit of its width along the pieced together map. Starting from the edge of Libra, we should end where we began. So there's Aries as a reference point. Continuing to 24, and I ended up about 5 degrees off, which is about 20 minutes off of a day. Another way of looking at it, since 1 degree is 60 miles, the map would be off by 300 miles. But this is most likely due to exponential errors from the map splice points created by yours truly. But it's pretty close. Part 2. It is widely understood that the zodiac signs have shifted by 1 sign because of a phenomenon known as axial precession, which looks something like this. Based on information provided by Thomas Ackerman, the notion of axial precession was established by Hipparchus in the year 160 BC. He calculated with proven accuracy that the Earth completes a full wobble every 26,000 years. It is convenient, therefore, to subdivide this established time frame into 13 2,000-year subsections, which further supports the theory of a 13-sign system. Based on these metrics, it has been estimated that Earth's poles reached the Pisces-Aries cusp in the year 1 AD, and if this were true and we divided this time frame into 2,000-year increments, it would suggest that the poles were in line with the Pisces-Aquarius cusp in the year 2000, and that we may have already reached the age of Aquarius. Therefore, it will not be until the year 4000 that we reach the next cusp line. In order to segue to my next experiment, I will convert this 2,000-year metric into a subdivided degree unit of 27.6 degrees, because 13 sections of a 26,000 year can be divided into 27.6 degrees within a circle. It leads me to believe that the modern-day pop astrologers are off their mark by 27.6 degrees, even though most conclude that it is off by 23 degrees. Let's compare the data of the Western zodiac wheel versus the wheel that I invented, the technical wheel, I call it, taking into account the axial shift. Because we are just about on the cusp of the age of Aquarius, let's begin our experiment by aligning the cusps of a traditional zodiac wheel to the parameters of the technical wheel. This is the technical wheel, of course. can see it's kind of uneven, as opposed to the tropical wheel, which is designed to be an even spacing of 30-degree signs, but it's not really based off the width of the constellations. So let's proceed with this experiment from here. Because the parameters of the tropical wheel are off by what I deem to be a 27.6 degree margin, let's turn the tropical wheel 27.6 degrees from Aries to Pisces, leaving the technical wheel where it is. So now that we have a ballpark estimate visual in a difference of 2,000 years, let's compare a tropical natal chart to a technical one, shall we? So just at random, Boris Johnson, for instance, is 28 degrees Gemini according to astro charts. But technically he would be 8 degrees Orion based on the technical chart that I've created. Katie Holmes, 26 degrees Sagittarius. She would technically be 20 degrees Scorpio. You see the black ring there? That's the technical. Beige ring is the tropical. So then Kanye West would be 17 degrees Gemini by tropical standards, but technically 26 degrees Taurus by the measurements I've made. Notably good folk singer Joni Mitchell, 15 degrees Scorpio. Would by the standards of the technical wheel be 43 degrees Virgo. So since these data points are, a little more on the arbitrary side, they don't really relate to what we can actually see with our own very eyes, let's now compare today's sky maps measurements of the sun to the technical wheel and see how close we came. According to skymaps.com, the sun is located between Leo's tail and Virgo's head. Not Leo's nose, there's a typo there. But the point is, with this equipment, they were able to pinpoint the location of the sun. And the sun's position is a little more complicated with the units of measurements they use, but let's compare and contrast. According to Cafe Astrology, the sun is 23 degrees in Virgo, which makes it by the standards of the technical wheel 30 degrees Leo. Since tropical astrology states that the sun is 23 degrees into Virgo, that would make it right here on the technical wheel. But as you can see, the technical measurement is only about 4 degrees west of the data provided by telescopes. So the data provided by, skymaps.com indicated that the sun was currently in 30 degrees Leo. And as you can see, that little squiggly symbol is representative of the technical Leo, and that M is representative of tropical Virgo, thus verifying a win for technical astrology. But that's only one data point, so let's continue with a couple more. According to skymaps.com, as of today, September 15th, 2024, Mars is located on Gemini's left foot. And please take into account that these data points were recorded on September 15th, 2024. According to Astrology Cafe, as of today, September 15th, 2024, Mars is 6 degrees in Cancer. So, as you can see, the wheel of the tropical wheel has been turned from Aries to Pisces by 27.6 degrees. And if, say, you don't believe me, you can rewind the video and look at the wheel turning and see exactly where it arrives, so that you can have confirmation that I did not manipulate any of the information to my benefit. And so, astonishingly enough, my technical map in this case is exactly on the mark if you relate it to the data point provided by skymaps.com. SkyMaps.com indicated that Mars was on Gemini's left foot, and lo and behold, it might be by some coincidence, maybe not. Mars is located directly on Gemini's foot in this map. If Mars were really 6 degrees in Cancer, as the tropical wheel would indicate, that would make it right here on the technical wheel. So once again, we find the 2 degrees being about 27 degrees apart, thus landing a second win for technical astrology. But let's move on to one more data point. According to SkyMaps.com, as of, yesterday, which is when this data point was recorded, September 15th, 2024 at 3:46 a.m. Mountain Time, the moon was located in Capricorn, directly underneath Deneb LGD. According to Cafe Astrology, as of September 15th, 2024 at 3:40 a.m., the moon was 15 degrees in Aquarius. So I have made the hash mark smack dab in the middle of Aquarius, on the tropical wheel, as it were. And let's see how close we get. And it is technically 4 degrees Capricorn, so yet again, we are about 4 degrees off the mark, because it was, according to SkyMaps.com, located directly below Deneb LGD, which is the star that's right there on the top of the Capricorn constellation. So it looks to be 4 degrees off, but that's not too shabby considering the moon moves pretty quickly. And if it were 15 degrees in technical Aquarius, this is where it would be. So as you can see, that second hash mark is where tropical Pisces is. So tropical Aquarius is technical Capricorn, and technical Capricorn is about 4 degrees off from the sky maps location of the moon. Based on these findings, technical astrology can effectively alter tropical measurements by 27.6 degrees west from the northern hemisphere to pinpoint the location of celestial objects on the ecliptic within 5 degrees of accuracy. Author's note: the ancient Babylonian, Egyptian, Chinese, and Greek civilizations all divided the sky into 12 sections, but the Mayans divided it into 13 sections. And their solar calendars are some of the most accurate calendars ever invented. Therefore, a 13-sign zodiac isn't as preposterous as I assumed it might have been. I will close this presentation with a snippet from Pulitzer Prize-winning author John Noble Wilford's book, The Mapmakers. In 1922, an acoustic depth finder was able to record measurements as far as 3,200 fathoms across the breadth of the Atlantic Ocean. A rough profile of the Atlantic was then drawn, but since there were still gaps of several kilometers between measurements, it was not possible to round out the true shape of the seafloor's mountains and valleys. But just 3 years later, a German research ship, the Meteor's echo sounders, took about 33,000 duplicate soundings and came within 15 meters of the compared results. So if you feel like you haven't made the mark, check your work, rinse, repeat.